Hi, my name is Alice Bartlett and welcome to The Rational Woman. Here we are discussing everything philosophy from personal relationship to geopolitical and economic issues. Let's get into today's video. Now we cannot ignore the hottest news that is in the media right now, that is the conviction of Donald Trump, the former president of the United States and the front-running candidate for the presidential elections in October this year. Before I get into the facts of the case and the implications of what the conviction implies for America, I would like to make some disclaimer. So first of all of the information that I've gathered today about the case comes from other news sources and other media platforms. I do not have first-hand account of the case. I am not a lawyer, especially not an American lawyer. So I might have misunderstandings of the case, but it is unlikely. Secondly, I am not a passionate Trump supporter. I hold conservative views, especially when it comes to economics. And I would describe myself as being for small government and a libertarian. However, I do not support Donald Trump in the sense that I need him to be the president of the US. I do believe that he will be doing a much better job than the current president, that is Joe Biden. And I agree with him on many of his policies, such as reducing taxes, energy independence, and just general economic freedoms that Joe Biden and the Democrats do not hold. So please keep that in mind when you're watching the video. So Trump was convicted of falsifying business record. Let's get into some facts of the case. So basically, from what I read on AP News here, is that the indictment centers on allegations that Trump falsified internal records kept by his company to hide the true nature of payments made to his then personal lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen, who helped cover up Trump's extramarital affairs. The case centers on payoffs to two women, porn star Stormy Daniels and Playboy model Karen McDougal, who said they had extramarital sexual encounters with Trump years earlier, as well as to a Trump Tower doorman who claimed to have a story about a child he alleged Trump had out of wedlock. Cohen paid Daniels, the porn star, $130,000 and arranged for the publisher of the National Enquirer supermarket tabloid to pay McDougal, the Playboy model, $150,000 in a journalistical dubious practice known as catch and kill. Trump's company, the Trump Organization, then reimbursed Cohen and paid him bonuses and extra payments, all which prosecutors say were falsely lodged as legal expenses in company records. Over several months, Cohen said the company paid him $420,000 US dollar. The indictment brought by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg made Trump the first ex-president to ever face criminal charges. Okay, so all of these supposedly falsifying of business record, each document counted as one count, and that was why he was charged in New York with 35 counts of falsifying business records. But it is still the same case. It's over the same situation of him paying this hush money to the Playboy model and the porn star. So there are a lot to dissect here, but in my best judgment, from all the facts that I've looked at, I do not believe the conviction of Donald Trump of a felony to be fair. And I am not a Trump supporter again. I am not a Trump supporter. I believe he would do a better job than Joe Biden, because Joe Biden is just doing a very, very terrible job right now with the economy and world politics. As you can see, there are two wars going on in the world, and the economy is in the toilet. Inflation is skyrocketing, or we are going through a cost of living crisis. Well, with Trump, I do believe that he is there are things that he could absolutely do better, and he actually did not fulfill his promise when he ran for office of draining the swamp and reducing government spending, which were two of the most attractive points in his campaign. Trump, in fact, increased government spending and made the federal government debt, a lot larger than it was before he got in office. So he did not do a fantastic job, but to me, it was still much better than Joe Biden's. So I am not being politically biased here when I say I do not believe Trump was fairly tried and convicted in this case. Let's have a look at some of the reasons why. So first of all, the judge that presided over Trump's case, Judge McCown, I probably said his name wrong, he clearly showed a political bias or affiliation that will make him unsuitable to preside over Trump's case. So he donated money to Joe Biden's campaign. Granted that it was not a big amount, it was a total of $30 from the news sources that I can gather. However, his daughter is actually a professional fundraiser for the Democrat campaign. So there are grounds to argue that he is not impartial from the start. He has a political motivation to convict Trump. And it could have been a different judge that did not show any of these signs that presided over the case. But that was not what happened. And this was also shown through his many of his practices in the case, such as not allowing many of Trump's people to testify in his favor. We will get into the details later. And throwing some of the media out over very small technical issue. So that was the judge. So just the judge himself makes this case unfair from the very start. And then we have the prosecutor, Alvin Bragg, who ran on the promise to get Trump. That was a quote from his speeches when he was running for district attorney. So for those of you who don't know, in America, the prosecutor, or they call it the district attorneys, are actually elected. So that was his main point when he was running, is that he was going to get Trump. So he brought the charges to Trump and called them felonies. Okay, but the fact is, from the legal sources that I can gather, again, I am not a New York lawyer, but from the sources that I can gather, such a case, that's hush money and then him paying back his lawyer and then not specifying the reason for the payment, it will be at best a misdemeanor, which is a lower category of crimes compared to a felony. So a misdemeanor also has a shorter statute of limitation. So what a statute of limitation means, the crime, also the supposed crime, has to be tried within a certain amount of time from when it was committed to when the defendant stands trial for it. So in this case, if the charge was a misdemeanor, then it would have been outside of the statute of limitation. So it's been too long, is basically what it is. But the reason why they were able to bring this as a case is because they chopped it up to be a felony, not a misdemeanor. So a felony has a longer statute of limitation. And this is the crucial fact of the case. How were they able to trump up something that would otherwise be a misdemeanor into a felony? Is because they argue that the falsifying of document as a crime was used to cover up an underlying crime that is more serious. So that was how they were able to classify the charge as a felony and therefore bring it to court. So this is done by a prosecutor, Alvin Bragg, who is known for actually doing the opposite in New York. So he would normally try to reduce a felony to a misdemeanor and refusing to prosecute things like marijuana use, prostitution, and also encouraging the other district attorney to not request jail time for things like robbery, assault, and gun possessions. So basically, we have a district attorney that otherwise would reduce the category of the crime and not send offenders to jail. In this case, he basically enlarged the extent of the crime instead of reducing it. So that in itself is unusual and unfair. And going back to the underlying crime, this is the key fact of the case. The district attorney actually never disclosed to the defense team and to the public what the underlying crime was. Okay, so just think about it. So the whole case was made legitimate because it was classified as a felony. Otherwise, it would have been outside of the statute of limitation. And the reason why something as small as falsifying like hush money and then not saying that on the record that it was hush money could be a felony was because it was argued that it was being used to cover up another crime. But throughout the entire case, no one knew what the underlying crime was. And the district attorney actually said himself, so Alvin Bragg actually said himself that under the law, they are not required to disclose, to specify what the underlying crime was. And what is more peculiar still is that the defense team in New York had to go first. Okay, so in a legal case, we have the prosecutor or the district attorney or public defender, and we have the accused or the defendant, and each will have to present their case for why their theory is correct. And in New York, the defendant goes first. So the Trump's defense team had to do all of their defense before they were even allowed to know what the underlying crime was that has brought this case forward. And that in itself is simply just a travesty, and I believe it is not justice when you're not even sure what crime you were being charged with and tried for, and you have no opportunity to defend yourself against that crime. So the defense attorney, Alvin Bragg, he basically said that it could be a number of things. It could be a tax violation, or it could be a falsification of other business records, or it could be a violation of federal election campaign finance law. So it could be any of these underlying crimes. But they never actually had to prove that Trump did this underlying crime. All they were required to prove was the intent of him trying to commit any of these underlying crimes. And going back to the judge, remember how earlier I said there's red flags that he was being impartial. Another reason is because he did not allow any campaign finance law experts to testify. So they are saying that Trump falsifies business records is a felony because he's using it to cover up possibly finance law violation. But they're not allowing any finance law expert to testify. Then how could Trump's team defend him? So Trump's defense team effectively did not know the theory of prosecution. So in other words, what Trump was being tried for until after their closing argument, after which they're not allowed to talk anymore. So yeah, that in itself was, I believe, such a miscarriage of justice. Let's talk about the jury here. So on all the news sources, it says that Trump was tried by his peers, 12 jurors who were the citizens of New York, and it was a fair trial. Well, let's delve into who the jury situation. Okay, so first of all, the jury are from New York. Okay, they famously Democrat area that they most likely have very negative feelings towards Trump in the first place. So that in itself is quite unfair, because we have cases like I'm not a lawyer, but I heard of cases that had to be tried somewhere else because most people in that city or in that area already established prior beliefs about whether or not the defendant was guilty or innocent. But that is not the main issue. So the main issue was jury's instruction. So first of all, remember how no one knew what the underlying crime that was the business falsifying a business document was being used for. No one knew that. That included the jury. Okay, so the jury was told that this could be a number of underlying crimes like tax violation and violation of campaign finance law. And because they did not allow the campaign finance expert to testify, the jury was never actually explained what that law was and whether or not Trump actually committed the crime. And the jury, the 12 jurors, did not have to agree on exactly what law Trump intended to commit. So it could be the fact is, as long as 4 out of 12 jurors agreed that he committed a crime, let's say 4 out of 12 jurors agreed that he intended to do tax violation. The other 4 out of 12 agreed that he intended to falsify other documents, and the other 4 out of 12 agreed that he violated campaign funding law. So they're all different laws, but as long as 4 out of 12 agree that he committed some sort of crime or intended to commit some sort of crime, so the underlying crime, okay, then he would be convicted. Not all 12 jurors agree that They understand what campaign finance law is, and yes, all 12 of them agree that Trump had committed campaign finance law violation, or Trump intended to do that. So it was not the case that all 12 of them agreed. They didn't even know what the underlying core law was that was violated. So all of those reasons and facts aside, let me ask you a very important question. Do you understand what the crime is that Trump committed? Do you understand it? Is it some sort of accounting error? Because, like, the hush money, no one is going to say on their record that it was used for hush money. Okay? And it is not illegal to pay someone hush money. It's not illegal. So, even if you don't have any knowledge of the law is in New York, in America, and the whole case, okay, you can still tell that this is not a murder case. This is not a rape case, something very serious. This is some sort of paper crime that was at best a misdemeanor that is now trumped up to be a felony. And not only that, 34 counts of felonies. And no one understands why or how it's a felony. Okay, so I have every reason to believe that the entire case was politically motivated, and it is as clear as day that had anyone other than Trump did this, they would not be charged, let alone convicted of a felony. If it was just a businessman paying off some Playboy model hush money and recording that as not hush money, but just simply legal expense, it would not even be a case. The reason why Trump was charged and convicted with this crime is because he is running for president, for office. So it is 99, if not 100% politically motivated. There is no actual evidence, but anyone with a brain can see that the legal system has been weaponized here. And it is extremely, extremely bad. And again, I am not a livid Trump supporter. I am just a common citizen of the West. I'm not American, but I want to be able to trust in the democratic system to the extent that we do not have to descend into violence. Okay, to the extent that America is still a country of law, and that there is some sort of peaceful way in which the voters, the citizens of the country, can have their will expressed, can be represented fairly, because the alternative is chaos. So America has now entered into this new, I would say, political era where the people of the country can no longer trust in the institutions, like the court system of the country and the democratic process. When the front-running candidate is being prosecuted and convicted of trumped-up charges that are not at all serious or warrant such conviction and possible punishment, I see America as being no different from Russia, places where democracy is not democracy, places where any front-running political candidate can just be thrown in jail, or leaving the people's will not ever coming to fruition. So at that point, do we still have a democracy? And I'm not a complete supporter of democracy, because I believe that democracy is mobtocracy. There has to be restraints to government, and there has to be things that the government cannot decide, i.e. the majority cannot simply decide. Things like property rights or economic freedom. The government should not have the authority to decide to take someone else's property just because the majority of the people in that country wanted it. So that's democracy. I'm actually a supporter of a republic, which means there is a constitution that prevents the government from doing things like that. So the voters can only vote for a government that can decide on 3 things: defense, national defense, police, enforcement of law and order and laws, and the courts, the judicial system. Anything economics, especially things like printing money and injecting bank reserve created out of thin air into the economy, things like that were not supposed to be done or even decided by the government. Okay, but if we cannot have a republic, the next best alternative that does not lead to violence is some sort of democracy where people can feel that they still have the power to change things if they wanted to, and the government and its institutions are fair and actually represent their will. What are you going to do in a country where justice is corrupt? It's weaponized to remove political candidate, and democracy and the will of the people is nothing but a pretense. Other people who do not want crazy printing of money, high inflation, and an open border, are those people supposed to just take it? So it's extremely, extremely bad for America, but also for the Western world, because America is always the beacon of light that the rest of the Western world will look to for processes. And I sincerely hope that this can somehow be overturned so that America can reestablish trust in its judicial system. So let's assess what are some of the possible outcomes here from this case. So 1, Trump does not win the election. Then all of his supporters, like almost half of the country, now believes that the election was rigged because he got convicted of this crime and they weaponized the legal system. What are they going to do? That's the first scenario. Second scenario, Trump wins. So Trump wins, he's then forced to go after the people who had done this to him. Okay, the district attorney, the judge, the legal system. So now the other half of the country believes that Trump is destroying all of its institution and destroying democracy. Neither side trusts in the institution anymore, and they all believe that the election is rigged one way or another. Then what is the next step? What is the next course of action for an American citizen? I feel very, very sad that this has happened in America. The one country that is supposedly a country of law and justice, and where democracy exists, and where people are free to choose their political president candidate, and the leader of the free world the leader of the rational world, it is extremely sad to see it starting to crumble piece by piece. So to conclude the video, I believe that everyone in America should be fighting with their life to overturn this conviction and to fight the forces that made it possible in the first place. Not because you like Trump and would like to save him, but because you have to re-establish trust in your institutions, your judicial system, and most importantly, your democratic process. Because that is the only thing standing between you and violent chaos. That is the realm of a banana republic, where whoever is the most vicious wins the election, or even worse, a country of men and not of law, where anything goes as long as those in power endorse it, no matter how unfair it is. A country where there is no longer any peaceful means to change the way you would like to be governed. It's not about whether or not you like Trump. You could absolutely hate him, but you must strive to protect whatever's left of the will of the people. So if you liked that video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Please also share the video and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you believe Trump's conviction was fair? Why or why not? Until the next video, stay rational.